Hello students, in this audio presentation I will discuss the poem The Voice of the Rain. It is actually chapter number 4 from Hornbill. First point, introduction to the poem. This is very important. What exactly the poem is all about. The Voice of the Rain is the statement of facts in an imaginary dialogue form, and that dialogue was between the poet and the rain. It traces the life story of clouds, formation of clouds, and finally descending as rainfall. Clouds are the transformed shapes of water. The core form of the clouds remains the same, but it gets transformed into various shapes and sizes. They cannot be touched, but are the saviors of nature. They are totally untouched, or they cannot be touched, or rather to say they are intangible also, but they are the saviors of nature and all forms of life on the earth. But despite all this, despite the clouds cannot be touched, they are the saviors of nature and all forms of life on the surface of the earth. The rain is the song of the earth. The water moves in a definite order. It turns into light vapor, moves upward, wanders in the sky, and finally it returns back to its birthplace lovingly. That means the rain finally returns back to its place of origin. It is a boon. Actually, dear students, the meaning of boon is blessing. It is a boon for the dry earth and the drying vegetation. It removes all the layers of dust from every object. But above all, it waters the dry earth, enables the seed to sprout. Actually, sprout means to germinate, or rather to say, to grow, and makes everything clean as well as beautiful. Not only that, it adorns. Adorns. It adorns, or we can say, beautify the world. And not only that, it cleans dirt and dust and atomies from the face of the earth. The poet asks the question, and the rain tells him all about his birth and end. The poet interacts with the rain, and from the rain only the poet gets acquainted with its origin and its final return to the place of its origin. Now, dear students, that was the introduction. Now I am moving on to the next topic, the central idea of the poem Voice of the Rain. This is also a very, very important topic. In this poem, the speaker recounts a conversation he had with the falling raindrops, or we can say the soft falling showers. He asks the rain, and here I quote, "And who art thou?" And strangely, the rain answers, calling itself the poem of the earth. So, when the poet, in the course of the conversation at the very beginning, asked the rain, "Who are you?" In reply to that, the rain told him, "I am the poem of the earth." The rain goes on to describe how it rises intangibly. I already discussed about intangible, that is untouched, that cannot be touched at all, as vapor out of the land and sea, and floats up to heaven, where it changes form and becomes a cloud. The core form remains the same, only its shape changes. And finally, formation of cloud, that we have read in basic science about evaporation, condensation, cloud formation, all these things, dear students, you all have read. Then it falls back to earth to refresh the drought filled land, allowing seeds to grow into something vital and beautiful. That means I already told you about the germination process. So it helps in the germination of the seeds. It makes it beautiful also, refreshing also. The speaker then equates. Equates means to compare something with something else. So I repeat, the speaker then equates the role of the rain. Role here means the function played by the rain. So I repeat, the speaker then equates the role of the rain to a poet's role in crafting this song or poem, because Whitman refers to his poems as songs throughout Leaves of Grass. And actually, the important thing is that it is actually a song, the Song of the Rain. And remember, dear students, it is actually taken from Walt Whitman's collection of poems, Leaves of Grass. So I repeat this line. The speaker then equates. I already told you the meaning of equates, compares the role of the rain to a poet's role in crafting. Actually, craft here means to mold or to give shape to a particular thing or object, you can say. This song, actually song is melody, or we can say the poem, because Whitman refers to his poems as songs every time, because instead of saying directly poems, Whitman refers to many poems, not only this, many other poems as songs throughout his entire collection of poem, that is the Leaves of Grass. He goes on to write that the song is born in the poet's heart. It leaves the poet's soul and changes form, but it always the same at its core, and eventually returns to the poet as love from his readers. And the same mechanism also, dear students, we find here, because the rain goes upward or moves upward in a very intangible manner, and obviously then there was formation of clouds, and finally it takes into different forms, or rather to say different sizes and shapes, and finally it descends back to refresh the world. Not only that, not only to refresh the world, but also it helps in the process of germination of the latent seeds. And not only that, it cleans the world of dirt and dust and atomies also. Just like a poem is a song according to Whitman, and that is this is actually Whitman's ideology. A poem is a song, and it is born in the heart of the poet. It leaves the poet's soul and changes form. Now I think you can understand the comparison I am talking about, the change of the form of the cloud, but the core concept of the core form remains the same. It changes in the various sizes and shapes, and then finally it descends as rainfall. It leaves the poet's soul and changes form, but is always the same at its core. That is, I already told you, the core shape of the cloud remains the same. And finally, eventually means finally, and finally it returns to the poet as love from his readers. There also, wrecked or unwrecked, it duly returns to the place of its origin. And the place of its origin is obviously the earth. So, whether cared or uncared, wrecked or duly wrecked or not wrecked, cared or uncared, the rain finally returns back to the surface of the earth. So, there goes the central idea. Now, I am moving on to the analysis of the poem. Analysis. Similar to most of Whitman's poem, the voice of the rain does not follow any specific form. Structurally speaking, it doesn't follow any specific form. That is, it doesn't follow any rhyme scheme or meter also. And most importantly, dear students, it is written in free verse. It is made up of one stanza with 9 distinct or separate lines. But some of the lines are so long that they bleed into the next. Now, some of the lines are very long. The first 2 lines contain the speaker's question to the rain. And who are thou? That is, who are you? The rain response makes up the remaining 6 lines. Whitman places the final line in afterthought in order to separate the speaker's words from the rains, because the last two lines are in brackets if you see from the text. Actually, that those two lines are not related with the conversation that the poet had with the rain. That last two lines exclusively dealt with the perception of the rain itself, or the thought process that went on within the rain itself. So it was totally different from the rest of the lines. So next paragraph, I am moving on. At the end of the poem, the speaker compares poetry to rain. Equating means comparing art with art's most essential element. And art's most essential element is rain, and art here means poetry or form of poem. Here Whitman reveals the high level of importance he puts on his poems, and that is poetry in general. Whitman treated his poems like his children. He put all of his emotional energy into his work and then released his poems into the world like water evaporating into the air. Now, Whitman is to consider his poems very close to his heart. He considered his poems to be like his children. And finally, after composition, he released his poems into the world like water evaporating into the air. That can be compared with water evaporating into the air. Each reader then has a different relationship with Whitman's words, which changes the effect of the poem while maintaining its spirit. Then the readers rain praise, criticism, love and hate back down onto Whitman. Now that is related with how a person interprets his poem. According to that, a person showers love, blessing, criticism onto him. After that, the poem occupies a different role in the poet's life. Now, after those things, love, criticism, affection returns back, after that, the same poem plays a different role in the life of the poet itself. I am moving on to the final paragraph. Whitman's comparison between poems and rain is demonstrative of his transcendental beliefs. Rather than associate his poetry with something modern and man-made, he instead chooses to associate it with the eternal cycles of the natural world. He tried to associate his poem with nature, with rain, or rather to say, with the eternal cycle of the natural world. He did not write poetry for the purpose of making a splash. He wanted his work to be affecting, vital and eternal, just like nature. He describes his audience as draughts, atoms, dust layers of the globe, as if reading Whitman's poetry is all they need to flourish and grow. Yes, as if he wanted to make this idea or ideology very much innate in his listeners or in his readers, that in order that by reading his poems, people can grow and flourish at the same time. So, dear students, I have discussed the analysis, I have discussed the central idea, and I have discussed the introduction related with this poem. In my next audio presentation, I will discuss the summary of this poem. Please go through this particular audio presentation, listen to it very carefully, and if there is any problem, kindly let me know. Thank you, students. Thank you all.